Sewell here with the Engearment.com podcast, and I'm super excited to have this next guest on, Dr. Craig Marker from Mercer University. I have known of Craig's work for years, and I got to learn alongside him at my first SFG, and then in 2017 at SFG 1 in Denver. He's also in The Quick and the Dead. I'm on page 43, and he's on pages 44 through probably 200, because he did a lot of hard work with Pavel in that book. So we're going to have a lot to talk about HIRT versus HIIT, exposure therapy, training for life and anti-fragility, and just a lot of fun stuff. So this is a great episode. Dr. Craig Marker, thank you for being on the show.
My pleasure, Sean. It's great to meet you. I mean, we've met before, but just to meet you in this type of format and to have this time to just sit and chat. So
I've been looking forward to this for years. So Craig hosted the StrongFirst podcast, which was my favorite podcast. And I listen to every podcast at least twice and take notes. And like, it was a dream of mine to ever have a discussion with Craig, especially on a podcast, and I would never dream it would be like this today. So thank you. This is going to be a lot of fun. All right, where to start? So many things we can cover. So what got you into studying health and fitness?
Well, first of all, I mean, it was maybe selfish reasons. I was always interested in bettering myself. I did a lot of research. My background is in psychology, but also in a lot of statistics. I have kind of a quantitative parallel path that I've taken. So I've done a lot with research, and I just remember some of my early research in statistics class, just bringing in nutrition articles and kind of reading about, what's this latest supplement, what's the research on it, and just trying to figure out if it's useful or not. And just got into, I do a lot of reading the research, and I really enjoy that. I think for some people, it's maybe difficult, or it's just difficult in the way of, like, you read one study and you think, oh, this is the greatest thing ever, and then another study doesn't show that, and then it's just overwhelming. So I feel like it's just a piece of the puzzle, and I need to figure out all the different pieces, and this is looking promising, and should I use it or not? And I'm like, I'll give it a shot, and those type of things. So I was always interested in bettering myself. I do a lot of experimentation on myself. I love the idea of testing it out and see if it works or not. And I think there are a lot of individual differences. So a big part of it is, does it work for me? Does it work for you? And, how does it work differently? So that's a lot of what my other research is based on, individual differences and how things are different for different people.
Oh, I love that. Your research is actually very easy to read too, on Breaking Muscle and on StrongFirst, and all your articles. They bring in, like, one of yours was about a little dose of poison, right? That was a great story about, like, exposure to things, exposure therapy. And I shared that article with my students, my clients, and he's a data scientist. And he really appreciated the way you worded things, because it's easy for a person outside of research to use words like proven as opposed to demonstrated, stuff like that. So the way you write is very palatable and approachable.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I try to, I think my day job is teaching. So I try to, and I teach statistics. Nobody really likes to nobody looks forward to taking a statistics course. So I have to really, see the forest for the trees and really try to make it accessible to people. But thank you. I appreciate you saying that.
That's awesome. Well, you have many articles that are very helpful. One of them that I think is really relevant, especially for people in training, is HIIT, high intensity interval training. I know it's been a buzzword for a long time. It's an advertisement for a lot of gyms. It seems to attract a lot of people. I even did it back in the day. I'm guilty of training HIIT classes and train myself with HIIT. And personally, I take notes of every exercise session I do for myself and for my students and clients. And with the HIIT workouts, we didn't really see good results, right? It was like hit or miss, and a lot of overtraining on myself especially. So then you have this article, HIIT versus HIRT. Can you describe what HIRT is?
Sure. Yeah, and then maybe I'll start with just the background on HIIT training. And I think it is a useful training method for where it's applicable. And the original research, Tabata, and he had worked with the Japanese skating team, and they were looking at, how to better improve, their intervals. And, he did these sprint intervals and 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, and up to 8 rounds of that. So that's 4 minutes. If the 7th round, if you're starting to lose power, you don't do the 8th. So true HIIT is really, really difficult, because to give your full out effort for 20 seconds 10 seconds off is no rest period really. So that's a really tough thing to do. So I see a lot of applications that are called HIIT, and it's really not HIIT. You can't do HIIT for 30 minutes, no matter who you are. I don't think anybody can do HIIT truly for 30 minutes, but that's useful for about 30 days. And then, the research studies are looking at 4 weeks of HIIT and improved 5K times, improved endurance, all of these great effects. But I think the problem with it is if you go past 30 days, you're doing a lot of breakdown in the system, and your body adapts, and then it stops adapting and starts breaking down. And I think that's the long-term part of HIIT isn't so useful. And I think that's where, I think it's good in doses, but not too much of it. So high intensity repeat training, that's really something Pavel has been pushing for years. I mean, in weightlifting even, he's talked about this: leave a little bit in the tank, leave a rep or two in the tank. And that's that same idea. You really push, and then your next set, you can perform the repeat part just as well as you did the set before. So you're trying to give yourself, it's basically, you're putting an all-out effort in, like HIIT, but you're giving yourself more rest so you can repeat it and do it again later. And that helps the body recover and perform better the next round. So you're breaking down things a little bit, recovering, and then doing it again. And instead of just continual breakdown set after set.
Well explained. And I've tested out for the last 3 years since the Strong Endurance seminar, actually 3 years in a week. And all the people I train, online or in person, have gone through now HIRT style training, and they've seen the benefit, and they feel good the next day and the next day, and we can plan out things. But I'm glad to say you're very diplomatic about HIIT. It has a place, but not more than 30 days or a month or so.
Yeah, and you're one of the first success stories. I mean, you're one of the guinea pigs who tested this style programming. So you showed great success with it. So
I appreciate that. Eric Frohart and back to your and Pavel's idea of leaving a little bit in the tank. Eric and I, the first time we met was over a coffee, and I didn't know he was with StrongFirst and a Navy SEAL. I just knew he was an outdoor man who liked kettlebells. So I went into a blind. We had a great time riffing and talking, and we're talking about backcountry skiing. I do split boarding. He does backcountry skiing. And I mentioned something about, I always leave at least one run on the mountain. And his eyes lit up. And he's like, that's our philosophy of training. I was like, oh, well, I like your training. I'm coming in. And it's so helpful. Like going really hard, but leaving a little bit left over, because life's going to throw you some weird stuff. And if you can't adapt to it, then what's the point of training?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yep. And I think that military idea is, that you never, and especially Eric and the Navy SEALs, you never knew what you're going to have to do and deploy. So you needed to, it's just functional. You can't say, I can't go today because I did leg day yesterday. Yes. You have to be ready to deploy at any moment for missions. So.
This is so cool. It's so helpful. How did you do the research to find out what rest periods and what, exercise to rest ratios were in place? Like, how did that all develop?
Well, I think a lot of, Pavel really is the most brilliant person I know, and he can really take some complicated literature and analyze it and kind of figure out what the best pattern is. And he does it more intuitively. He's reading a lot of the old Soviet literature, and the way they came about doing it was they look at a large group of people and figure out what worked best. Where we, in more Western science, we take a group of 12 people, try this one idea and see, does it work for this group of 12? So the Soviets were amazing of keeping logs of every practice session or every workout. I call it practice session, but every workout. And so there's a Medvedev, a year of Soviet weightlifting, and he goes through all the workouts and everything and analyze what are the best techniques. And that's what Pavel does, and he can read things. And so he was, coming at it from that idea. And then we just started playing with different protocols. So we had some that had more reps and longer rest intervals, some with shorter work intervals and shorter rest. And what we were finding different effects. And I think, we really have to get into the physiology of what's happening to figure out, what work to rest ratio, but they all have that same principle. You're going to push your body into an adaptive state, not too far where you're breaking it down, but it adapts, and then it gets better later on. And some of those, some of those things are better for hypertrophy. Some of them are better for more endurance. Some are better for fat loss. So we were just playing with different plans and testing things out. So we're kind of he brought in the Soviet style, and then we were kind of testing them sort of Western style, where we're, doing small groups of testing.
Oh, that's so cool. It's so cool because you gave me a program, 033C, and Matthew Flaherty as well, I believe, and he had great success with it too. And he's a father of two, and he applied it here in Steamboat Springs to on a very long bike race of 100 and some miles. And yeah, it's amazing because on paper you look at it and you wouldn't believe it, like all this extra rest. Why all the rest? But the science behind it is legit, and the application, more importantly, is real and realized.
And real quick on that protocol, I mean, what's interesting about his results, it's a long bike race, and it's not anything related to kettlebells and sprints and kettlebells. So that's what's unique about it, is it brought those lasting effects, and maybe we don't know exactly what's happening, but created more mitochondria. His body could recover faster, and he had more endurance over a long-term race. So yeah, it had these really neat effects with it.
Yeah, and for listeners and viewers, to give you an example of the differences in the training and the application, 15 seconds all out basically compared to several hours of high intensity. And it correlated, it paid off for him, for myself, for Eric Froher, for all the people who've gone through this program. So it's amazing stuff.
Yeah. It was always fun to live vicariously through you all and see these amazing effects.
Oh, happy to do so.
And I believe he also said, like body composition wise, it changed his body composition quite a bit. So
well, yeah, and to give you credit in the Quick and the Dead, your own success. Let's talk about that for a moment, because yours is amazing, and also a little bit of the science behind it, because you're going to mention probably like telomeres and stuff. So please.
Sure. Yeah, no, I again, like I like to, measure as much as I can. And I was playing around a little bit with looking at DNA and longevity. And so telomeres are the sort of the end caps of our DNA, and it's thought to be a protective factor. It's associated with aging. There's some different methods that people are looking at to look at how much you're biologically aging, and this is one method that they're using. And so I decided to get measured, and I believe, I'm trying to remember when I was getting measured, because I got measured, I didn't do it exactly at the beginning of the protocol, but I had been using these style protocols, and at the end, and I just did it again, I think I'm now 14 years younger than I actually am according to my telomere age.
That's incredible.
So I've got, there's another Horvath method that I've got a kit, and I want to test that out too, but that's based on another process of methylation and what's happening. So, I don't know what to, they say exercise is good for your telomeres, but in this case, it worked really well. I also checked my testosterone. One of the things that happens when people overtrain is, maybe their testosterone improves for a little bit, but over time it starts to go down when they start to overtrain. And my testosterone levels, and I forgot the numbers, I can look them up, but, my testosterone level actually went up too. So, I felt better, and those are some indicators that I was, actually doing better too. So.
Oh, that's fantastic news. Yeah, and as a person over 40, male, I track my testosterone and hormone levels too, make sure that I'm not overdoing it when things are moving forward. And yeah, it's very important stuff. There's a lot more things to play than just calories in, calories out, and exercise. Like, there's a lot of moving pieces. It's so fascinating. And speaking of things outside of the training, is there other things that you incorporate into your lifestyle that you feel help you with recovery and performance?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always trying to stay healthy. I think part of it, as after getting over 40, is just staying healthy and being able to continually train. So I do things that are, probably my 20s was figuring out what isn't good for me, or was doing things that weren't good for me. 30s was figuring that out, and 40s is don't do that stuff anymore. But, trying to make sure, like, I have a good squat pattern, I have good mobility. I have a 2.5-year-old, so sleep is pretty good, but better than it was, but, it's still a challenge at times. But, trying to just make sure I have good recovery, eat well, and those type of things. But
excellent. Yeah, I mean, taking care of yourself outside of the training is very important. And, talking with Eric again on our last hike, he was talking about breathing through the nose and breathing techniques in general. I mean, I've recently learned more about breathing, and obviously this weekend there's a really big event that I really want to attend for breathing through StrongFirst. But like box breathing or in your other work, psychological and mental health, do you incorporate breathing techniques to help with anxiety and other things?
Yeah, Eric got me going on. Eric and Peter Lakatosh is really big on the breathing techniques, and they got me really thinking about it. And Pavel, I went to the first second wind in Hungary, and the idea is we, just like with everything else, we can overindulge, and we're kind of used to having too much air. And I know you're up in Colorado, so it's maybe a little bit different. But for us lowlanders, I don't know if that's even a term, but I've got plenty of oxygen. I can breathe out my carbon dioxide. But to challenge that system, we build better sensitivity for we can handle less oxygen or handle more CO2 in our body and those type of things. So I do try to do a lot of nose breathing. I haven't tried the duct tape over the mouth at night yet or anything like that. But
not happening, Eric.
Yep. Eric was talking about how he walks his kids to the bus stop with duct tape on his face, and I'm like, you're probably getting some weird looks, but I don't think people mess with a former Navy SEAL.
Yeah, Eric's in a whole other level of awesomeness.
He is, yes.
On that hike that we were on last time, it was probably about 8,000 feet elevation, and he breathed through his nose the whole time. His heart rate never got above 130, and he had 50 pounds of dumbbells and kettlebells in his backpack, just to give you guys a reference of Eric's level of, intensity.
Yeah.
And smart, is very wise about it. He gave me a lot of great advice, and I tried to use most of it except for the duct tape on the mouth. But he's at a whole nother level. So yeah. He's a great guy. Exposure therapy. So I know that one of your articles, a little bit of something is good for you. Let's talk about that. Like, what are some things that you expose yourself to, hot or cold or other things that help you adapt?
Yeah, and I think it goes right along with that high intensity repeat training, that, this idea that we push a little bit to our discomfort, we create an adaptive response. And when we have an adaptive response, it's not a linear response. It's we have this big response to little stressors. And if we, and you know this very well, but if we keep stressing the body with the right dose, we'll get stronger for it in the long run. And just like you said, with the air, the less we breathe, we have an adaptive response. We become less sensitive to carbon dioxide buildup. So, that's the reason to do that, the nasal breathing. And it keeps his heart rate down and your heart rate down. I do a lot with cold exposure. I live in Atlanta, so this is nothing like you would have to deal with. But like in the wintertime, like last winter, I didn't wear a jacket at all. I have a really old jacket, but it gets down to 20, 25 in the morning. And, I take the dogs for, 2-mile walk in the morning, and I just try not to wear a jacket. And, its first couple of weeks is pretty tough, but you adapt to it. And, the mechanism for that is, thought to, build up more brown fat, which is associated with better insulin sensitivity and all of these other factors. So cold exposure is something I do a lot in the winter. I have a tub that I've been meaning to put ice in, but I don't do it that often in the summertime. But, summertime heat exposure is, another good, and that, has other benefits. And so my car, I have air conditioning, but I never turn the air conditioning on and I never turn the heat on. So I come home from the office and I'm a sweaty mess. And, my wife doesn't, I try to give her a big hug, but for some reason she just wants to avoid me at that time. But, we have these simple things where we can expose ourselves to discomfort. And that's, I feel like it helps us build a more adaptive body where we can handle heat and cold better, or lack of oxygen better. So those are some of the things I do. Anything that feels a little uncomfortable, I try to do it. And that's sort of my gut reaction. I don't really want to do this. And I'm kind of a shy person. And I think one of the reasons I got into teaching was because I don't want to do this. I don't want to be in front of a large group of people. And I felt like, well, this is what I need to do then, is be in front of a large group of people and try to teach. And so anytime I feel uncomfortable, I tend to push towards it rather than avoid it. So
that's a big topic. That is really impressive. Yeah. Okay. Well, the hot and cold, everybody has access to either one of those at some point in time, and so yeah, embrace it. And I like the saying of if it makes you uncomfortable, get comfortable with it. And for you, going into being a professor, that is so courageous to go in and do that. Like you, I'm very shy. I have very high anxiety, social phobias. So when I go to do a group session or whatever, or go learn in a big group, I'm like, all right, I'm going to learn from this. I'm going to get a little tougher from this. And yeah, then after that, I go back and cope and go walk the dogs and recover.
Yep, you need your recovery. Couldn't
Yeah,
do it all. Like I have way too much cortisol if I did it all the time, but
exactly.
it feels great to push myself through those things. And that's some of the my psychology research is on anxiety disorders, and what we do is that sort of gradual exposure. We have people who are socially anxious and we have them, do something that's uncomfortable, just stand up in front of me and give a little speech. And then we go to the grocery store and have them stand outside the grocery store and, like wave to people and say, hi, welcome to the grocery store. I hope you have a good shopping experience. Or, there's oranges on sale, and we have them do like escalating activities where it becomes more and more difficult. Sometimes we have them lifting milk jugs in the store and like, I got to get my exercise in, or doing things that bother them. So trying to look weird or whatever it is that bothers them. And, we've done many karaoke nights and things that, to really push people past their comfort zone. And if you can do those weird things and those extreme things, then the day-to-day just talking to somebody new is not a big deal anymore. And that's kind of the idea, is just like we do with our training, we train past what we want to do in practice. Like with your hunts or your hiking, you train pretty extreme with kettlebells. You're not actually having to do that explosive of work when you're hiking, but you can handle if you slip and you don't fall or trip up, because your body's can handle those type of things. So we do extreme things that the normal doesn't feel very difficult anymore.
That is such good advice on a lot of levels. And I like your techniques for the anxiety. Those are great. And who doesn't want to be greeted at the store? Hey, oranges are on sale. It's a win-win.
Exactly.
That's great.
The show Impractical Jokers, I don't know if you've seen that, but they just do things to each other and they play practical jokes. And that's a great source of ideas for people with social anxiety. And, one of the things we do is we have them go up to somebody and say, don't I know you? And just this idea of, having to talk to somebody and this person's like, no, I don't know you, and just get away from me. But they're having to deal with this sort of negative reaction to them. And, it makes them stronger in the long run. Like, I can handle anything if I can do those type of things.
That is so cool and applicable. So anybody out there listening to this or watching this, you took some notes hopefully from Craig right there. You can go do this and expose yourself and adapt.
Yep. And this isn't going to be helpful, but we do it also with people with OCD. And, so imagine somebody's afraid of germs. And I don't know how many times I've had my hand just sit in a toilet, public restroom in a toilet, because we're exposing that person, just if they can do that, they can live a life that's pretty normal, because they know they can survive. So we do extreme things with any type of anxiety disorder to help people get past it. So OCD is always interesting, because those are probably not as applicable to most people, but
That's really fascinating. My whole family, they're all passed by now, but they had OCD and they're hoarders. And so I lived in a home where I had a lot of exposure to different mental abilities and disabilities. And it's very fascinating to me how people see the world, how they operate, and how they adapt. So I think it's all very applicable, very helpful.
yeah, yep. And it's and I think part of the reason people have anxiety disorders is that they want to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you're trying to be safe, the smaller your bubble gets. And, one time or two times it's fine. You don't push yourself and I'll be safe. But the next time your bubble's a little bit smaller and a little bit smaller. And eventually, people come in for treatment when their bubble's so small that they can't, live anymore. And that's what we want to try to do, is just keep expanding the bubble and make them live a full life. So.
Oh, that's great. That's great therapy practice. I like to hear that as opposed to just medication and that's it. Wow. Back to the breathing. Is there any particular breathing technique that helps with anxiety?
And it's a lot of the same. So with people with panic disorder, and that's kind of the extreme of that physiological part of anxiety, the breathing, there's actually somebody that does just breathing type techniques and getting people less sensitive to the carbon dioxide. So a lot of the same breathing techniques, the nasal breathing is really helpful. Probably the simplest one that I have people do is just breathing down into the diaphragm. A lot of times, for people who just aren't used to any breathing exercises, they tend to breathe in the chest, and that just sort of short breaths don't really, kind of actually amplify the sympathetic response. Where if you breathe down into the diaphragm, breathing down where your stomach goes in and out, that brings about a parasympathetic response. And so your body slows down, and that's, that's probably the simplest thing is Brett Jones always talks about crocodile breathing. And I think that might have come from Gray Cook, but laying on your stomach and just feeling your belly sort of breathe into the ground. And that's probably a really good practice for many people to reduce anxiety.
Oh, that's great. I might do a video on that later today to share with people so they have an idea what that looks like, because it's a very good way to learn the proper way to breathe into a diaphragm.
Yep. Yeah, you get that feedback from feeling your stomach on the ground. Yep.
Yeah, and everybody has a ground somewhere, so anybody can do this.
Exactly.
Do you still track things like heart rate variability and resting heart rate and stuff like that?
I do. I play around with that quite a bit. I kind of go back and forth, but I have a watch that measures my heart rate variability throughout the day. I had a mat on the bed, and that was kind of a neat thing. I could see where I wake up, and it would give me a recovery number. But the watch seems to be doing pretty much the same thing. So I like to track that, and one, it gets at recovery, but heart rate variability is also kind of a proxy for your parasympathetic response, or your we have the gas, the sympathetic response. And we also, if you've got a Lamborghini, you want a good braking system too. So you want that parasympathetic response. So HRV also measures that parasympathetic response, how good you can kind of gas and brake and maneuver. If I take that analogy as far as I can, but
that was great. Well, like you, I bought my wife an Apple Watch for our anniversary, and I got myself one. It's great because we can help keep each other accountable, but also heart rate variability on there, which is great because it'll do it randomly. I'm like, oh, 20, I need to take some breaths and get it back up to the 93 or something. It's really good.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yep.
And I don't know about you, but I really enjoy when I'm trying to teach people about breathing. The box breath seems to be the simplest one to teach people. Either 4 seconds or up to 5 seconds. And do you use that at all in your practice?
I do. Box breathing is kind of, like you said, it's one of those things I can just pull out really quickly. I've been doing some of the like free diving type of exercises where I do breath holds. So I've been trying that a little bit too. And Peter Lakatosh really got me on that. And just, kind of just pausing your breathing for a little bit. And, I have a little timer. And it takes you, it's that sort of, you've got interval where you hold your breath, a rest interval, hold your breath again. So I play with that a little bit. So it's just kind of a more of an elaborate box breathing, but longer durations of breath holds.
Oh, that's super cool. I know when we were doing the oxygen advantage, you breathe out and then you count as opposed to inhaling.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I have a couple of friends that I train that are bow hunters, and they took it very seriously, and they got their resting heart rate down to like 50s and stuff. It's pretty cool stuff.
That's amazing. Yeah,
it's free.
Yep. I worked at an event with Peter, and the whole time he's wearing, and I didn't quite get it all until afterwards. I put it all together, but he's wearing a blood oxygen, gosh, I'm forgetting what the name of it is, on his finger, and he's watching his blood oxygen level go down, and he gets really excited when it gets down to like 85, and then, but he's doing breath holds, and I'm talking to him, and he's not talking back to me, and like he'll wait, and then all of a sudden, like 45 seconds later, he'll start talking to me, and it's like he was holding his breath. I'm sorry, but he does that all day long. I mean, he's constantly practicing these type of things, and so I was pretty amazed. So I take that as inspiration that I need to do more of those things throughout the day.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. I'm inspired now too. I've got a couple of pulsometers, and I carry one in my gym bag and one in my truck because I'm a nerd, and I like go climb up to elevation. I'm like, what is it at right now? Oh, 96, pretty saturated.
Yeah, yep. That's awesome. Yeah.
Oh, this is so fun. Pulsometers might be a little bit hard to get right now, but they're a good tool to have.
Yeah.
Really cool stuff. Oh, I love this. I've got tons of notes here, Craig. Like just the notes. This is good stuff. Back to your article about what hurts you a little is good for you. I think it kind of encompasses this, but there's a really fun story in there. Do you want to share that story about the prince?
Oh, yeah, gosh, I'm gonna have to remember what I wrote, but yeah, so the original story was this prince had his father had died from poisoning, and um, and so he was worried about being poisoned himself. There was an attempt on his life by poisoning. He found out it was his mother who was very much wanting power, and so he went off into the desert, trained, learned how to do weapons, how to run an army, but also was at the same time taking all of these poisons, and little dose by little dose. And he built up this immunity to poisons by taking small doses of it. And I forgot the number, but like he had this special mixture of like 40 different poisons that he was taking. And then he eventually went back and took over power, and I believe he died. He was in a situation where he was surrounded and was going to be taken prisoner, and he took poison to just end his life because he didn't want to become a prisoner, and the poison didn't work on him. So if I'm remembering that story right, but that same idea that where our body adapts, and the little bit of stress helps us adapt. I don't recommend this to anybody, but there's been some studies just on radiation, and we have a response to radiation that actually protects us. And so a certain amount of X-rays, I've always said, oh, those are bad, we try to avoid it, but a certain amount actually causes a protective response. And there's so many of these hormetic responses that we have in our body that, like the cold exposure, we build up this response to it. Heat exposure, we have this mechanism. So, anything that, and the more I read into this, it's the breathing, we have this response. The more we challenge our body with the right amount of stress, we have a response that makes us stronger in the end. So that's what got really fascinating for me about all of this.
Oh, it's so true, and I think it ties into the what you're working on right now, like anti-fragility. Like how to become not just strong, but like how to adapt. So you're working on a book on this, is that right?
Yeah, and it's again, maybe a selfish endeavor. I was just trying to learn as much as I could. It was originally going to start with stories of people who have had anxiety disorders, how pushing against their fears really changed their lives. Kind of the same thing with exercise, the physical component. But the more I got into different mechanisms, like I kept discovering more and more of them. So the book has expanded a bit, and talking about many of these different mechanisms, and it gets into a little bit more of the details of what's actually happening in the body. And there's now I'm forgetting my term, but it's by Mark Mattson about vegetables, and he calls them noxious phytochemicals. And I just love that terminology because that's how I feel about vegetables. They're just noxious phytochemicals. But yeah, I mean, the same thing, like vegetables are thought to be great antioxidants, and oxidants are thought to break down the body. But in small doses, oxidants are a signaling mechanism that lead us to change. So there's been studies that look at taking high amounts of antioxidants after exercise actually reduces the effect of exercise. So you don't want to do antioxidants after exercise because we need that signaling to say we're damaged, we need to repair and become better than we were. But a lot of the effects of vegetables might be related to the noxiousness of it, that they're meant to not be eaten, and our body responds to it and becomes stronger because the phytochemicals in there cause a response in our body. So
Wow, that's some big stuff to digest right there. I like it.
I like the pun too of digesting, because it's yep.
Oh, that's awesome. Is that Mark's Daily Apple, Mark, you mentioned?
No, Mark Mattson's a scientist. I can certainly share articles if you want to put anything in the links or something. But yeah,
helpful. Yep. Well, you were also featured in Mark's Daily Apple. Sent me over a link yesterday. That was awesome. It's so cool because he's got his audience over there that more endurance running and stuff like that, and he literally gives an example of your research on the field. It's really cool. How'd you get involved with him?
Uh, Brad Kearns is kind of a good friend of mine, and we just started talking about it. And a lot of the things Mark Daly's Apple does, I mean, they were both endurance triathletes and had been pushing, and their bodies were starting to break down. They were pretty elite level athletes. And with Primal Endurance was one of their first books. They talked about either run fast or walk slowly, and don't do the things in between. And that really fits in with a lot of Pavel's work and Verkhoshansky before him, this idea that you sprint or you do a lot of walking and slow aerobic work. And so that kind of fit into what we were doing at StrongFirst, and I just started talking to him about the process there. And he was doing a lot of sprints, but he was doing a HIIT style with the short rest intervals, because and once you do a lot of endurance, you get kind of hungry for that feeling of acid and breaking down and things. You feel like you've accomplished something if at the end you're like flat out on the ground, worn out. And we just started talking about the same principles apply, where you need to recover at the end. You should feel like you can go do more after you finish. And so that's how I got involved with them. And they're just a really great group. I really like that sort of mindset that they have of just getting things back to simpler, more natural ways of doing things.
Oh, I dig it. I appreciate that so much. And I think that helps encapsulate why people probably gravitate or have been doing HIIT, because they think that they should feel crushed after a workout. And I try and meet them halfway. I try and be curious. Say the person had a busy day at work and they want to go to a class or a session. They want to feel like they did something in that session. They want to feel it immediately, and they want to be sore for a day or two. HIIT, yeah, it's applicable there, right? But if a person really has goals past that day or past that week, training more intelligently is going to benefit not just the way they feel, but their health and wellness as well. So
definitely so, yeah. And going back to that idea of, is HIIT all bad? Or, I think, and it's part of like the way that I train, like I'll do cycles of things. And once in a while, I think, and Pavel will say this too, is you need a competition. You need a short amount of time where, you're doing HIIT for, every once in a while, just to kind of burn out the system, to force it to adapt in an extreme manner. But then you need to recover. Just like you don't do a max deadlift every time you try to lift, you'll do it every 6 weeks or so. And that's the same style, I think, with HIIT or those type of things. I need to do a snatch test every once in a while, even though nobody likes to do a snatch test, or some people maybe do. But
statistics, yeah, you're right, and I like that you guys have that into your philosophy as well. I train for life. Most people I train for are similar mindset, but it is nice sometimes to go in to do something and see how you feel, and just have a suffer fest for a little bit. For example, I started training at a new gym a month ago, all SFGs and SFLs, great people, and they have a lot of tools I had never seen. So like a echo bike, like an assault bike, right? And then a Concept 2 rower. I had never, this is embarrassing, never used either one, right? So I'm like, give me a little breakdown how to even adjust the seat and all that stuff. And then what is your number that you hit? So I have something to gauge. And on the echo bike, it was like, how quick can you burn 10 calories? I'm like, I don't even know what this is even measuring or why I'm doing it. But his record was 11 seconds, and so I shot for 11, and I got 11. I'm like, that sucked, but we did it. Now I know what that feels like. And it's nice to know, like, when you can apply it in a somewhat fun competitive way.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And all of those protocols like that are in the quick and the dead. I think they adapt to those type, like an echo bike. I think, you can do sprints on that really well.
I did enjoy that.
They're not, I mean, and that's what Tabata did. A lot of them were on bikes, his protocols at the beginning. But the rower, like I do that. I got a rower too, and it just, the rower doesn't even have metrics that go in the short intervals really that we want to do, but I'll do, 20 seconds on, 40 seconds off, or, 45 seconds off. And it's hard. But yeah.
Oh gosh. Is it the Concept 2 rower, I'm guessing?
Yep, yep.
Oh, it's so cool. I didn't know how to adjust that thing last week, and then Ryan helped me adjust it and put it on 8, and he's like, here's a 500 meter. How, just do it, and I'll tell you if you did good. And I think it's like a minute 40 or a minute 38 or something.
That's great. Yeah.
Thank you. And again, I never trained for it, ever. I didn't know what that was until 5 minutes before it. Training the way that you and I have trained before, the carryover, it's just right there.
Yeah. And I like the rower quite a bit. Pavel and I were talking about what exercises could be alternatives for the 033. And I like the rower. It's like, to me, if you think about it, if you look at it, it's like a deadlift.
Yeah.
We're just, angle is just different, but we're basically doing a deadlift. And if you do it mostly with your legs, and then the top part is just the standing up of the deadlift. I mean, you're getting your legs and your posterior chain involved. I like the rower for that reason. I think, and I asked Stu McGill about this. His wife is a big rower, and people who row tend to also whip their back. And, that's okay if you've got the good technique. And I think it's important to have good technique on the rower, but if people just do it like they're doing a deadlift, I think you can get by and get some really good benefits from a rower. So I don't think we have to all learn how to whip our backs or do things like rowers do, but if we keep it like a deadlift, I think we're pretty safe, and it's a good exercise for many people.
Oh, that's so encouraging. I'm going to go do that today. I like you, I've enjoyed playing with other exercises in these time frames. Trying to just keep it lively. And also, kettlebells aren't really prevalent. Like, I've got a lot of kettlebells, thank God, but you can't just go buy kettlebells right now. So what else can we do? How do we adapt?
Exactly. Eric got me, we were someplace and he just had a jump rope with him. And, when you travel, you can't bring a kettlebell. You sometimes don't have a gym. I mean, he's always got a jump rope with him, it seems like. So jump rope is also good.
He gave me good advice about jump ropes. I have arthritis in both my feet. He's like, start jumping rope. Just deal with it. I'm like, oh, okay. So started jumping rope, and it got better.
That's awesome.
Yeah, adapt. This is so helpful. I've got so many good things to put in the show notes that people can benefit from immediately. Can I ask you how you're currently training yourself?
As I mentioned, I kind of do some cycles of different things. So right now I'm there's a hypertrophy plan that we came up with, and it gets a little bit acidic. So what I do is I do a set of 25 swings with a 48 kilogram. I feel a lot of burn in the posterior chain, but then I have 10 minutes of rest before the next set of 25. So in that 10 minutes, I'll do 3 sets of presses. And those presses, I kind of do a plan strong version of that. And this is, I'm sorry for people who don't know these terms, but that's just variation in the number of reps and the weight. But so I'll kind of have some variability in my presses, and then I'll do another set of 25. And so the idea behind it was, what we think about all of the stuff Pavel mentioned. Usually we think we don't want any acid. Like there's the A+A program, the lactic plus aerobic. And the idea is don't get any of the glycolytic system working, that sort of middle system. And with 25 reps, you get the glycolytic system going. You feel the acid, you feel the burn. But the idea is if you've got the burn, you've got 10 minutes to get the acid out of the system. There's some benefit to having acid in the system. And in this case, we think it's more hypertrophy. And, a lot of, the bodybuilder style reps are more reps, not 25, but, 10 to 12 reps. And you're getting a little bit acidic in the muscles when you do bodybuilder style reps. And that's kind of the idea with this program is you get a little acid in the body. It's in the lower half, but then when you're doing presses, you've got a little bit of this buildup. And so I do 3 weeks of this, and then I'll go to like a 033. I might do a test of where I'm at. I always try these challenges. When I first started reading Pavel's work, I thought he was challenging me, and I know that sounds silly, but like he would talk about the Marines have a pull-ups where if you get 25, you get the max score. And, the new Army test has 25 pull-ups is, kind of getting the max score. So I always try to make sure I can do things like this. So I try to make sure I can do once in a while train for pull-ups. And I was like, I need to do 25, or I'll need to, deadlift 2.5 times my body weight. So sometimes I'll go on a training program like that and something specialized. But for the most part, I'm just doing 0 to 33 hypertrophy plan. Once in a while, a challenge or two. So the 0 to 33 is kind of my go-to base plan for the most of the time, though.
Cool. Thank you for elaborating that. And I'm glad to hear that, because that's my base plan too. When in default, it's 033.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. It just works. You feel great afterwards.
Yep. And you and I know 0 to 33, but maybe for listeners, that's the plan outlined in the Quick and the Dead. So yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And the Quick and the Dead, it's a great book. It's on Amazon. It outlines how to do this. I get emailed all the time, like, how does it work? I'm like, just buy the book. It's Pavel's work. Yeah. But basically it's 2 exercises, a push and a hinge.
Yep. And it's just, Pavel's writing is just so awesome. You gotta read the way he writes about it. So
oh, and I had the audiobook too. And when the audiobook came out last year, I got tears of joy, because he says my name, he says your name in there, Matthew's name, and I'm like, whoa, Pavel said, like, I made it my ringtone for a while.
That's awesome. I love it.
Thank you. I was very encouraged by that. But yeah, listening to him talk, it's entertaining, informative, direct, and kind. It just works.
Yep.
Well, that's awesome. And when you do your Q&D, do you do it fasted or?
I do most of the time, yeah, because I'm usually doing it early morning, and I try to do at least a 14, 16-hour fast, mostly 18 hours a day, and then once in a while I do an extended fast. But yeah, so it's usually morning, probably at least 12 hours when I do it, and then I got another couple hours of fast after that.
That's really cool. I like that a lot. Is there a benefit to doing it fasted, and is there a benefit to not having a recovery shake afterwards or eating afterwards?
It probably depends a little bit on your goals. I think for me, without getting into the physiology too much, you're trying to bring down your ATP as quickly as possible. You have an AMPK response, which triggers more mitochondria. So down the chain, triggers more mitochondria being built. If you eat, you're kind of shutting that off, because you have an insulin response. IGF comes and that shuts off that AMPK response. So if your goal is more endurance, I think not eating afterwards is perfectly fine. If you're trying to build as much muscle as possible, you probably want to have a recovery shake afterwards. And again, you can cycle these type of things. Like the hypertrophy plan I'm doing now, like I'll eat right afterwards. And so I won't fast as long on the days I'm training. So it probably, again, I think it's good to adjust it every once in a while. That idea of cycling through things, I think, goes along with adaptation. So,
oh, I love it, and very well explained. Yeah. So, like you, I don't really want more muscle right now. So, fasted seems to work very well for me. And my goal is just I want health and wellness and more mitochondrial efficiency and heart rate variability, all the benefits, all the side effects. Yeah. So if you want muscle, eat. If you want the more underlying stuff, don't.
Yep. And just, some of you mentioned the telomeres.
Yes.
But what I'm also fascinated about is this, longevity benefits. And when we, fast, or when we, do these workouts that are practice that's generating more AMPK, we're also causing an autophagy response. We're getting rid of mitochondria that aren't functioning that well. And this is really, mitochondria are thought to be associated with so many disease processes. And, so when we do that, we're also probably helping ourselves live longer. Also, even with immune response, and I think immune response is really important. We're thinking about it quite a bit right now. I think it helps with building a better immune system. So I think that's also another benefit that we get. And the more we overtrain, the more we weaken our immune response.
And I've definitely experienced that many times. Like, no rest, too much volume, injury, or sick. It just almost always happens. So
it's like your body wants to adapt and wants to... Yep.
But it just can't all right, we're stopping now. So that's very good advice, especially right now during the pandemic. If you like to work on your immune system, this is a safe and effective way to help with that. That's a very big takeaway for a lot of people. Oh, this has been amazing, Craig. Is there anything else you want to cover?
I think you and I would love just to sit down and talk to you. We don't have to necessarily do a podcast. I mean, it's always great. We've always had really good email conversations. And so that's, and at a CERT, we don't get to talk like this as much. So I think we just need to sit down and talk more. I need to come up and see you when I can start traveling again. But
Oh, I would love that, Craig. I always enjoy talking to you. I learn so much. We share notes, and you get me very inspired. My mirror right here is all A and 033, 044 notes on my mirror right here. So you've been very helpful in my life, and I really appreciate it. And
well, and again, I'm not going to take any credit for it, because I mean, Pavel is really the brilliant man behind all these ideas, and Verkhoshansky and other people he's pulling from too. I mean, I just got to ride the wave of this, so I'm just glad to be part of it.
Oh, you're very humble, and I appreciate that about you. I'm going to have links to you and your upcoming book when it comes out. I'll update this show notes so people can get your book on anti-fragility. Dr. Craig Marker, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate being on the podcast.
My pleasure, Sean.
Awesome. And to listeners and viewers out there, I'm going to put notes out here on how you can learn more about Craig's work. He's got several very well written articles, so I'll have that in the show notes. And until next time, take care.